Hey everybody, welcome to the What is Money Show. I am thrilled to have you here joining me on my mission to help shine light on the corruption of money. Now, a little bit about this show and how it makes money. We are 100% sponsor based, which means that all the revenues we derive come from sponsorships. But I try to be very selective about the sponsors that I work with, specifically trying to choose those who have values well aligned to the values expressed on this show, like freedom, education, self-sovereignty, etc. So what I'm going to do is a few ad reads right here at the top of the show and then a few ad reads in the middle. And I hope you won't skip them. I hope you'll take the time, listen, and see what they have to offer, because again, these are hand-selected sponsors. Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Swan Private. Swan Private is a concierge financial services firm based in Los Angeles. Now, I've known the Swan team for years, and these guys are laser focused on the Bitcoin mission. They even have a zero tolerance policy for all shitcoining. Recently, their CEO, Corey Clipston, was instrumental in calling out many of these crypto scams right before they collapsed, saving a lot of people a lot of money in the process. Swan Private focuses on guiding high net worth individuals and businesses on all aspects of Bitcoin strategy, including buying, custodying, and market research. This concierge service provides you direct access to a private advisor by text, phone, or email. So go to swanprivate.com/breedlove today to sign up. Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Ledn. Ledn lets you do more with your digital assets. For instance, Ledn offers a B2X loan product that lets you leverage your existing Bitcoin to buy even more Bitcoin. Or you can also get traditional Bitcoin collateralized US dollar loans through Ledn as well. Ledn also offers both Bitcoin and USDC denominated savings accounts, letting you generate yield on your digital assets. Recently, Ledn has launched a Bitcoin mortgage product as well that lets you use Bitcoin to buy a home or finance one that you already own. So go to ledn.io, that's LEDN.io today to sign up. JW Ross, welcome to the What is Money Show.
Thanks for having me on.
It's glad to have you here. We've been talking about this for quite some time. And by way of quick introduction, you are the founder and CEO of Botanic Tonics. And this is a product I was introduced to, I think it was by Ben Greenfield, who's another podcaster and fitness guy. And he was marketing this as kind of an alcohol substitute. And I had stopped drinking for a period of about 18 months a couple of years ago. And so I gave it a shot, and I really enjoyed your product, and I've recommended it to a number of friends since. And so maybe we could just start there. Like, who are you? How did you get into this line of business? And what exactly are Botanic Tonics?
Okay. So I actually, like you, I'd stopped drinking. Mine much more severe story than what you're describing, but I had to stop drinking, and that was like 12 years ago. And when I did, my life vastly improved, but it wasn't the life that I wanted. I needed the alcohol for social lubrication. I had real anxiety issues with being, relationships and with people in crowds and all that. And it really helped me. And I knew that if I didn't find something else to replace alcohol, that I would go back to doing what I was doing before, which I knew was a dead end. And so I went out in the market, tried everything legal I could get my hands on, euphoric or social lubrication. None of that really did much for me. It didn't do what I wanted. And then I tried everything illegal. And most of that did way too much. Or I wasn't looking for something that, I didn't feel like I could drive a car or go work out, or, I wanted something that, I could go through my day with, and I couldn't find it. So I started researching and kind of leaned back on some plants that I'd run across at different points earlier in my life. And that's how, and it really wasn't about doing it as a business. It was strictly for my personal consumption. But in the process of doing that, I was trying, my friends and family were using them as guinea pigs. And when I hit on the right combination, they're all like, you need to sell this stuff. And that's how I got into consumer packaged goods.
So interesting. And so you were mentioning earlier that you had this kind of interesting path in your career. You started out, I think you said in oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
You later got into fintech and then ultimately into consumer packaged goods with Botanic Tonics. Do you think there were aspects that were setting you up for this along the way? Like typically in my career, I found that things that I didn't think were necessarily relevant in one position somehow, like some skill that I may have picked up that I was later to find another use for it in a later role or a later endeavor. How has your career path sort of brought you up to this point? Are there aspects of the oil and gas and fintech experience that serve you today?
There's no doubt about that. A lot of the mistakes that I made in prior businesses, I've been able to avoid in this one. Started out oil and gas here domestically, and then went over and did a project in the Middle East. And then right after that, I went into fintech. Was trying to come up with a new technology for remittance for migrant workers. And I launched that in Southeast Asia and lived there for about 2.5, 3 years. And if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have been exposed to one of the key ingredients that we use to create the tonic. So every single thing along the way, was a piece of what we're doing now, including we're going international this next year, and just the experience of dealing with a business in multiple different markets around the world. And there's just a lot of things there that if you don't know, and you're going to get nailed. That I've already paid for that learning curve.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned a lot. We also tend to learn a lot traveling in general. I think plugging into different cultures prepares you for a lot of uncertainties, I guess, in life, dealing with uncertainty and whatnot. You mentioned that your time in Southeast Asia was instrumental in getting you into the Botanic Tonics. Was it the discovery of the actual ingredients? And if so, like what is the Botanic Tonic?
Yeah, so Botanic Tonic consists of two main ingredients, Kava, which is the root of a pepper plant from the Pacific Islands, which I had been exposed to over 30 years ago, just on a guy trip, just partying and wound up in Vanuatu and Tonic Islands out in the middle of nowhere. And the village chief invited us to this ceremony. And I remember, it was a pleasant experience. I kept that in the back of my mind. And then when I was in Southeast Asia, I was introduced to Kratom, it's a tree. It's in the coffee family. And it's used there by workers for endurance and productivity enhancement. So ultimately, I wound up combining those two plants, which no one had ever done before. And that's the basis of Feel Free.
So it's Kava and Kratom are kind of the main plants or ingredients that are active in them.
It's mainly Kava. It's 10-to-1 Kava over Kratom.
Got it. Mostly Kava, a little bit of Kratom. Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier that it was using alcohol for overcoming or dealing with social anxiety. which I think is by far the most common use case. Like even people that drink casually
Mhm.
have told me it's like they just want a little drink to take the edge off or just to, let your hair down, whatever expression you want to use here. But ultimately, people want to modify their consciousness a little bit, right? When they're getting into the social groove.
And it's actually alcohol is very effective.
Hmm.
The issue you have with alcohol is for some reason most people don't make this connection because it's so deeply woven in our fabric of our society is that alcohol is a very highly processed food,
Hmm.
uh,
Right.
just like a junk food. And in doing that, it's pretty hard on your system physically, especially when you start getting in larger quantities, which is what I ultimately wound up doing. Um, for most people, that does not lead to a good place. Some people are able to control it, but it's for a lot of people it's so highly concentrated that it's hard to dose the right amount. And it's fairly short acting, so you're kind of doing another one, and it's easy to get tipped over the scale because the feeling's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's can be quite euphoric. And then, as you said too, it's so normalized in our culture that I guess the presumption is, well, everyone does it and it's legal. So what's the big deal? Um,
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll run into people that are health fanatics, talking about how clean their diet is and no junk food and all that, and they're sitting there with a drink in front of them. And, you know, that's as highly processed as anything else that you could put in your body, but you don't connect the dots between the two. That's no different than if you're having Cheetos or something. I mean, it's the same thing.
yeah, yeah. And I resisted this for a long time because the science is pretty clear that alcohol is just bad for you. Like there's not much in terms of silver lining when it comes to alcohol consumption. I used to try and, people were often talking about, a single glass or two glasses of red wine a day was good for your heart, has resveratrol in it, antioxidant for anti-aging and things like this. But when you actually dig into the science, that's kind of all bullshit. Uh,
It's clever marketing by the alcohol
yeah,
company.
yeah. Uh, Maybe a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people, but let me tell you, alcohol is just bad for you. It doesn't really offer any benefit as far as I know,
The
other
thing of
than,
it is that in doing and going through this, I'm a research fanatic, and I really got into researching social lubricants that have been used around the world for the
hmm,
last thousands of years, and there's a handful of them. And what's interesting is that alcohol is an outlier. So you have Kata in South Africa, you have coca in Central and South America, you have kratom in Southeast Asia, kava in the Pacific Islands, and then you have alcohol. But none of those in their native societies are processed other than alcohol.
hmm,
The rest of them are used in very natural form. And in the natural form that they're used, they don't have the physical and social issues that you see with alcohol.
hmm,
And I think it's because of the processing.
hmm,
You're able to get much more in your system than if you take something that's the way Mother Nature designed it. And we're seeing the same thing with the kratom here in the U.S. because now, just like they do with coca leaves from cocaine, 99% of what you're getting in the market here in the U.S. is extracts,
hmm.
um, which again is taking out a lot of the other alkaloids, a lot of the fiber, and you can get a lot more in your system. It becomes about getting high, not about productivity enhancement and
Hmm.
focus. And you look, an example is that you take kava. Kava has been used for 3,000 years in the Pacific Islands. Um, no real violence issues, no social issues, no physical issues, and they drink it, all the time, just like we do coffee here.
Hmm.
You know, I was in Vanuatu, one of the islands there recently, and was talking to a Frenchman that has business interest in a lot of the different countries in that area, and he said it's like night and day. He said the islands that are Kava forward have extremely low crime rates, violence rates. The islands that are alcohol forward are just the opposite. Yet the Kava will do the exact same thing that the alcohol does. It's just as efficient of social lubricant, but it does it in a different way. Alcohol, what I found now is that alcohol, it amplifies you, makes you more aggressive. Liquid courage, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Kava does the opposite. Kava quietens you down and allows you to focus on everyone around you. And you have better relationships and better conversations and all that because you're open now to really listen to what people are saying versus trying to interject yourself over the top of them. And you have just as pleasant of experience, if not more pleasant, because you get that social lubrication, but it's done in a completely different way.
That's interesting. So would you say it's a more empathy inducing, perhaps, relative to alcohol?
It is. I very early on, I was introduced to a health guy down in San Diego called Paul Chak. And I took it down to him to try. And when he tried it, he's within about 20 minutes, he goes, this is a heart opener. And I kind of cringe because that's kind of a hippy dippy term. But I really think that he nailed it in that, because what it's doing again is it's quietening you down and getting you out of your head and opening you up to the people that are around you, which, is really opening your heart.
Yeah, I think, heart openers, at least from, I have a little bit of a background in yoga. There's a lot of heart opening kind of training that goes into that, but there's also substances, people use, and this is used in clinical settings today, MDMA, right? That's a heart opener.
Yep.
So there is really something to this activation of our empathic nature that seems to be much more of a net positive than alcohol. I'm not sure what alcohol is amplifying, what seems to be our darker nature, perhaps.
It just amplifies us overall.
Yeah.
Again, I think the liquid courage is a good description because it makes us bigger than we normally are.
Yes.
Which I guess can be good in some cases, but in a lot of cases that's not good.
Yeah, it does a good point, because it can turn someone that's happy-go-lucky into someone that's just super happy-go-lucky, or if someone's a little bit darker, then it can make them, very dark. But the cost of that transformation is the real problem, right? That alcohol takes such a toll on your body.
Exactly.
To achieve that goal. So, okay. So I think, at least from my perspective, the science is very clear. Alcohol, bad. And again, this is something that I resisted for a long time because I've always been a social drinker. I've always enjoyed it. What does the science say about the ingredients in Botanic Tonics, Kava and Kratom?
So Kava has never really had any issues. There was one scare with Kava in Germany years and years ago. It was actually a supply had come in that had salmonella, and some people got hurt by that, and that really kind of tainted Kava for quite some time, as people were talking about liver damage and all that. But the reality is that you can look in the societies that have been using it, every day, long term. You don't see any of that. You don't see any physical or social harm. It quietens you down. It makes you, docile.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it's just a wonderful plant for anxiety. Kratom is a lot more controversial. And if you look at it again in its native society, is no issues because they're using it in its natural form the way we're using it.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened is just like coca leaves, which coca leaves are wonderful too. You got people in Central and South America that have been chewing their entire life, no issues. But then we take solvents and we create cocaine out of it. That's a whole different thing. They've done the same thing with kratom here. Exactly the same thing. It's got 52 alkaloids. They extract 2 of the 52, which is what they do to make cocaine. And it becomes a much different animal. And if you go online, you'll see quite a bit of negativity around it. That negativity is based on the extracts, not the fully natural kratom.
Interesting. So it's the refinement process, or the human intervention, or what are we doing? We're synthesizing a few compounds out of the full spectrum of the plant and then concentrating it, right? That's what you're doing. That's how you turn coca leaf into cocaine.
You're able to get, it's mainly mitragynine and hydroxymitragynine is the two main alkaloids, and you're able to get 1,000 times more of it in your system than you normally would.
Oh wow, that's incredible. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Alcohol. In alcohol, you're fermenting, and you're able to turn it into something else that it wasn't really wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I hiked Machu Picchu in Peru. I did the 4-day hike at one point, and it's quite high elevation. I think we were between 8,000 and 14,000 feet, depending on what part of the trail you were on. We're hiking 8 to 10 hours a day. We had people that helped us carry our, we're camping and all that. They were helping us carry our things up the mountain. But the altitude made it so difficult. Like, it was difficult for me to just take a step, really. And the coca leaf is what saved me. Like, everyone was chewing coca leaf on the hiking trail. I didn't notice any effect at all, right? It's not really stimulate. I mean, maybe very mildly stimulating, but it just helped you deal with the altitude sickness.
It does, and it is helping you with productivity and endurance, but it's doing it in a very mild manner. So it's not like caffeine. Caffeine is jolting. I mean, if you read the science and you do, it jolts your system. Coca leaves kind of accomplish the same thing, but they do it in a very mild manner, and you don't have this big spike and it comes down. It's just kind of it's kind of a more of a soft bell curve.
Yeah. And that's just by virtue of using the whole plant rather than trying to refine it, right? That makes a lot of sense.
Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, CrowdHealth. CrowdHealth is a Bitcoin-enabled alternative to legacy health insurance. Now let's face it, legacy health insurance is an absolute scam. Nobody can explain this better than the legendary comedian Chris Rock.
Insurance. You got to have some insurance. You got to. That's an insurance. They shouldn't even call it insurance. They should just call it in case shit. Like, I give a company some money in case shit happens. Now, if shit don't happen, shouldn't I get my money back?
So with CrowdHealth, instead of just paying premiums that you'll never see again, you can hold part of this pool of savings in dollars and in Bitcoin through CrowdHealth. And when you have a health event, you can draw against this pool of communal savings. So go to joincrowdhealth.com/breedlove to learn more or sign up. Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Wasabi Wallet. Wasabi lets you use Bitcoin privately while still maintaining full control over your money. Specifically, Wasabi Wallet is an open source, non-custodial wallet with privacy built in by default. By using Wasabi, you're effectively putting the private back in private property. Wasabi Wallet is an easy-to-use privacy wallet that can support any amount of Bitcoin transactions. So go to wasabiwallet.io today to download this state-of-the-art wallet software. Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Masterworks. Masterworks gives you access to the fine art market at more affordable price points. They do this by offering you fractional shares in their $500 million portfolio of fine art. Now, fine art is an alternative asset class, and historically, it's been a great performer and a really good hedge against inflation. Most investors typically hold anywhere from 2 to 10% of their assets in an asset like fine art. To sign up or learn more, go to masterworks.com and use promo code BREEDLOVE. Now, I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes it simple to buy and secure your Bitcoin without wondering whether you're doing it right. Specifically, Casa provides a multi-key custody solution, which is by far the most secure way to custody your Bitcoin. Now, when I talk about Bitcoin being theft-proof money or inviolable private property, a multi-key custody model is exactly what I am talking about. Using multiple keys lets you maintain full control of your Bitcoin while also giving you redundancy in case you lose one of the keys. It's also the best way to secure your Bitcoin for inheritance planning purposes. So go to keys.casa, that's C-A-S-A, today to sign up and use discount code BREEDLOVE.
Sharing this with you offline, when I was in college, it was like my late college years, I had sustained a slight injury, and I was working with kind of the athletic department at the University of Tennessee at the time, and they prescribed me an opiate for the injury. And I found that I really liked the way the opiate made me feel. I really enjoyed the feeling of it. And from people I've talked to, it seems to be kind of like a 50-50 shot. Either people hate the way it makes them feel or they love the way it makes them feel. Yeah. And what I noticed when I first took the Botanic Tonic is that it seemed like a milder version of that. Like I got the euphoric kind of energized feeling, but somewhat euphoric, a little more talkative, physically somewhat euphoric as well. Is there a relationship there between opiates and
there's a lot of
tonic?
Controversy out there about kratom being an opioid. It's not an opioid, but what it does do is that it hits the same receptors as the opioids do. The difference is that the opioids, they hit the receptors and bind to them, whereas the compounds, the alkaloids that are in kratom, strike those receptors and move on. So it's as you described, it's a much milder experience versus a synthetic opioid. The other thing that's a benefit because of that is it's not as addictive as the synthetic opioids are. I'll preference that though with my opinion is that anything that makes you feel good, you can become dependent on.
Sure, sure.
Sugar, or if it's cheese, or if it's sex, or whatever it is, that to me is not the question you should be asking because that's a given. If something makes you feel good, you want more of it. The question is if I do it on a regular basis, is it going to hurt me physically or socially? And what we've seen with the tonic is that because we're using the full natural leaf and all that we're serving over 1 million servings a month now, and we've not seen any evidence of either physical or social harm. No serious incidents to date.
That's interesting. What is in terms of like dosage? Because the drinks that you sell, they're small. What are they? 1 ounce bottles, maybe?
They're 2 ounces.
2 ounce bottles. Is there a certain recommended dosage in terms of how many per day or how many per week you limit?
We recommend no more than 1 per day. Like most everything else, the poison's in the dose.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. If you do too much of it, it's going to not be good for you. So
right, including water.
Recommend you can kill yourself with water. Of all things. Most people don't realize it, but last year there was 154 people that died from caffeine.
Wow.
So too much caffeine can kill you. So it's about moderation. And we suggest, no more than 1 bottle per day.
Got it. And then in terms of use cases, because I've used it for work, workout, social gatherings, and I found it to be pretty effective at all of them. I don't prefer it for a workout. It does give me a little bit of energy, but it's not, I almost like to work out just stone sober. I found that to be the most effective. But for work and social gatherings in particular, I found it to be useful. What are the use cases, I guess, most people are using it for?
So that's an interesting thing, because when I start talking to people about this, they look at you like, well, that's too good to be true. It seems like, work and social seems like two totally different things, but it makes sense, because you have one plant that's a social lubricant, Kava. It's, very similar to alcohol as far as what it winds up doing. And then you have Kratom, which is historically was used by workers in the field to not only endure, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but to actually enjoy, doing it. And when you mix those two together, you get what I described as chilled energy. So it's not a caffeine type jolting energy. It's a social energy. And that applies to, working out early in the morning, crushing a work assignment, or letting your hair down at night. And it does it amazingly well. And so most of the people that use it wind up using much less caffeine and alcohol than they use it throughout the day.
So people are using it often as a caffeine or alcohol replacement, it sounds like.
Yes. In fact, most people wind up using it for both. And that really wasn't what I designed it for, or that wasn't the problem. This was kind of a, added benefit. Because I strictly was doing it, for the alcohol replacement side of it. The other thing that we've noticed is that, and I'm not sure exactly what's causing this, but something about these two particular strains, when you mix them in the percentages that we're mixing them, you get this real focusing quality, which, allows you then to really, crush whatever, assignment or whatever it is that you want to do. It does a wonderful job at that.
Two things that most people wouldn't consider being on the same wavelength, like caffeine and alcohol, but it does seem to be useful for replacing either one of them, in terms of, again, I've used it for work and it gives me a certain level of cognitive stimulation, motivation perhaps, but then also makes you a little more social, I guess, too, in social gatherings. So I thought that was cool. It was a cool effect. In terms of side effects, so what are there common side effects or issues that people deal with when consuming Kava or Kratom?
So just like any other ingredient, there's a small percentage of people that, have an allergic reaction to it. And that's, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be peanuts or whatever. I mean, some people will get severely ill if they, consume. What we've seen here is that you do have a percentage of people that have an allergic reaction to it, and it's usually nausea. It's a very, very small percentage. I mean, it's tiny, but for those people, when they consume it, their body immediately tries to purge it, because it's, the body realizes that this is, not a fit. Really, other than that, we really haven't had any reported issues. You don't get a crash off of it. You don't get a hangover the next day. I mean, early on, because nobody had mixed these plants together before, and I knew that, some people would abuse it, I did very, very high levels of it for an extended period of time. And then check my blood chemistry versus my annual blood chemistry. And I didn't see any elevation in liver enzymes, blood sugar, any of that type of stuff. I went one step further and I actually did some of the kratom extracts for a period of time. And within 60 days, I saw elevation in liver enzymes.
Oh, wow.
So there's something there about having the rest of those alkaloids and the other material that's in there that protects you from that.
And there does seem to be maybe a slowing of the digestive tract, or at least some effect for me on the digestive tract. It's not anything negative necessarily, it just definitely changes up digestion a little bit. Is that related to diet, or is that just kind of a one-off thing that I'm dealing with? Or
no, it's for some people it's you need to stay really hydrated when you're using it, because it has kind of a diuretic effect to it. As we discussed earlier, what I found for me was that adding a little bit more unpasteurized dairy to my diet offset what I was seeing. And I don't really see it at all at the doses I'm doing now. I did see it when I was doing much higher doses when I was testing different levels that it had some constipation.
How high did you go on your dosing schedule when you were experimenting?
I did 6 bottles a day for about 3.5, 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Wow. I've never taken more than one, I don't think, in a day.
It, again, I didn't see anything physically in blood chemistry, but I did feel a little toxic.
Yeah.
Which I think that would be the case if you took, that much of anything.
Sure.
And I didn't really like the overall feel of it as much as I did a smaller amount. It's the less you do, the more energizing it is. The more you do, the more sedative it becomes.
Interesting.
And very similar to alcohol. Alcohol at smaller doses is more of a stimulant, but you trip over that edge and it becomes impressive.
Yeah, for sure. Did you notice a significant correction? Like after you did 6 bottles a day for 4 months, was there like a period of adjustment coming back? This seems like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I tapered down off of it after that. I've learned, over the years, trying different things, that it's better to, if you're going to try something at high levels like that, you don't want to just abruptly stop. You want to taper down off of it.
Yeah.
And one of the worst examples of that, where I learned that, was years ago. I got into Diet Cokes, and I was drinking like 8 Diet Cokes a day. And I just decided one day to stop. And I had the worst withdrawal that's probably anything I've ever tried to get off of. I mean, just the headaches were just unbelievably horrible. It lasted for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
I mean, Advil or anything else wouldn't touch it.
Yeah. So taper on and taper off if you're going up the mountain. It's good advice. So yeah, I guess I want to pivot here a little bit into the personal development side of things, because as we said earlier, alcohol usage is very widespread, as is caffeine usage. I guess caffeine is probably more widespread than alcohol. I've found both alcohol and caffeine to be damaging. I guess I'm going to be 37 in about a month. So things that worked in my 20s started to not work in my 30s. So I've been trying to adjust things as we go.
Wait till you get in your 60s like me.
Yeah. But my instinct is that there's a large cohort of people that kind of quietly struggle with either alcohol and or caffeine.
That's been what's been the most fascinating part of this journey, is that, I always knew, and it gets a lot of publicity, there's this segment of society like me that, are alcoholics and just, go off the deep end with alcohol. But I think what I'm realizing now is there's this much, much larger wedge of people that they're not losing a job, they're not crashing cars, they're not having those kind of issues, but they're having subtle signs that their life is not quite balanced the way that it should. They wake up the next day and go, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or, or, I just don't feel good this morning and I don't feel like, going and working out like I normally would, or whatever. And it's just these little kind of things just kind of gnawing at you a little bit. And I literally get, hundreds of calls from people every month talking about that. And what's interesting is it's a lot of young people. It's young people that are in their, late 20s and 30s, along there. And I think, as you described, is you can get away with a lot when you're, early 20s. But your body chemistry starts changing, and you can't do what you can't abuse your body the way that you could before. You can, but your body recovers differently and it reacts differently. And I think what happens is that, people start out drinking and then, they kind of accelerate a little bit. But then this, your body's changing and they hit this inflection point where they start saying, is this worth it? Is the trade-off for what I'm getting worth what I'm paying here? And I think that's a huge segment of society. Much, much larger than anybody thinks it is, because those people aren't in the news. They're not, it's not a big thing that people are talking about. But I can tell you, based on the feedback I'm getting, there's a lot of these people out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there have to be. I mean, my own personal experience was in my 20s, it was all benefit and no cost in terms of alcohol and caffeine, right? Like, alcohol makes you feel good. And then I actually was one of those people that didn't get hangovers that much. So I could just drink and I could go to bed and wake up and I'd be fine. So there was no real cost, I guess, other than financial cost of actually buying the alcohol.
Right.
No health costs, let's say. And then with caffeine, it was just the thing that makes you work harder and faster and smarter. And I never felt really any negative consequences to that either. Like, I would just drink the caffeine and there was no problem. But then in my 30s, like you said, for me, it was gut inflammation, gut issues. Both alcohol and caffeine seemed to be aggravating to the issues I was dealing with. So I was trying to find out ways to remove them. And alcohol was actually much easier. Alcohol, I could just quit, which I did. I quit for a long time. But caffeine was extremely difficult because I was dependent on caffeine for work.
I talk to people and they're like, they say, well, caffeine's not, caffeine doesn't have withdrawal. And I'm like, when is the last time that you didn't use caffeine?
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll kind of think about it. Well, I've never stopped.
Yeah.
I'm like, just try tomorrow, abruptly stop and see how you feel.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you're consuming much at all every day, you're going to feel like crap for a while.
Oh, yeah.
It does have fairly serious withdrawal symptoms.
Absolutely. With alcohol, for me, I was able to just put it down. Again, I wasn't a heavy drinker, just kind of social drinker, but I just stopped pretty much on a dime one day. I just said, I'm going to stop. And I stopped for 18 months. Yeah. The first 3 weeks, on the weekends in particular, like I guess the habit or whatever, I wanted to drink, but I just kind of white knuckled through it. But after 3 weeks, the feeling went away. And it's like, I could care less about alcohol. I could have never drank again, I think. Caffeine, on the other hand, When I quit caffeine 6 months ago, and for the first week, I was extremely emotional. I was like depressed. I felt like I had lost an old friend. It was so strange, like the ritual of drinking the coffee, and I love the taste and the jolt that it gives you. It took me I was kind of out of it for 2 solid weeks. But now I'm so glad I did, because now I wake up and I'm up. I don't need to crawl to the kitchen and make coffee.
Right.
And it's helped me too, as I said earlier, like just get rid of some of the things that were aggravating health issues I was dealing with. So that has been a big help. Do you think that alcohol and caffeine would head down the same path as tobacco?
I don't think that caffeine will, because caffeine to me doesn't have as serious of downside as alcohol does.
Mm-hmm.
From what I'm reading and what I'm hearing from people, there seems to be finally a shift away from alcohol, especially seems like younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking for other options. And I think that it appears to me that it's going down the same path as tobacco.
Hmm.
We're in the very early stages of it, but you're starting to see mainstream media report more and more on the downside and the dangers and all that. That maybe this isn't maybe this shouldn't be the fabric of our society.
Hmm.
And I don't think that I saw that even 3 or 4 years ago.
Hmm.
I mean, just today, looking through different streams of media, I saw 3 different articles on talking about how 1 in 3 or 2 in 3 people now don't consume at all, and just talking about how people are really trying to find other options en masse, not just this alcoholic segment.
Mm-hmm.
You're a broad part of society, which I think it's a great thing. I mean, and that was, if you go back, that was kind of where this pivot in tobacco started.
Right. Yeah, the casual drinking that seems, again, widely accepted, culturally accepted, but people don't stop to kind of account for the cost that it's inflicting on them. For me, it was those morning workouts. Like after not drinking for a couple of weeks, how good your morning workouts become. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like you double in your endurance, your mindset, your energy, like everything just doubles.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be the best way to make it evident. Because if you just have a couple of glasses of wine and you don't have something, you need something to measure it against. It might be your sleep too. I notice a lot of people now wearing these fitness tracking watches and whatnot, and they're often reporting, wow, when I drink, my sleep like goes to hell.
Alcohol is very disruptive for sleep.
Yeah.
An interesting thing about that is that we have a lot of athletes that use Feel Free. And a lot of them are very serious about tracking, everything, including sleep. And we're getting a lot of reports about much better quality sleep when consuming Feel Free versus not consuming it.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Now, is Feel Free, that's the only product you guys have right now? The 2-ounce bottle?
Okay. It's the 2-ounce bottle. We are launching a capsule version of it next week.
Okay.
It has like almost anything that's really changes. It's got a really strong flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
So people just can't get past that. So the capsules will solve that issue, and then the bottles are kind of hard to travel with if you're going long distance.
Mm-hmm.
So the capsules make it a lot easier to travel and keep it with you.
Got it. Is capsules the same ingredients, just in a capsule form?
Exactly the same. Yeah. The only difference in the capsules is there's no flavoring to it. It's just the actives.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoy the taste. Like it is strong, but I've always liked plant flavored stuff. Like I like green tea in raw form, and or I guess earthy plant flavored stuff. So I'm just kind of a fit for it. But I have heard other people say that they can't deal with the taste. So that makes a lot of sense.
One of the things that's interesting is that some of the people that reported nausea with the tonic that we tested the capsules on didn't report the nausea, which leads me to believe that the nausea was set up by the taste.
Right.
That the taste was overbearing, and it set the stage for ooh, I'm going to get sick.
Yeah.
And the body reacted to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. When are the capsules launching?
Next week.
Next week. Nice. Well, that's very cool. I assume the strong flavor is because of the plants, obviously.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Well, JW, thank you for making these drinks. I've been sharing them with family and friends, and hopefully helping people wake up to this alcohol caffeine thing that we're all trapped in. It seems like this normalization of alcohol and caffeine. Where can I send people to learn more about your work or Botanic Tonics?
So the company is Botanic Tonics. So botanictonics.com is the website, and there's a plethora of information on the website.
Wonderful. Well, JW, I really appreciate you doing this.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.